It was supposed to be a $1 billion show of force, America flexing its military might against the Houthis, a group without a navy. Instead, it turned into one of the most embarrassing disasters in recent memory. 2 F-18 Hornets gone, 7 Reaper drones destroyed, hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars burned, and not a single strategic objective achieved. But the real explosion didn't happen in the Red Sea. It happened in Washington when Senator Tammy Duckworth unleashed a blistering takedown of Secretary Hegseth that left the room silent. This wasn't just political theater, it was a public reckoning packed with accusations of incompetence.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to my colleague from Oklahoma, I believe the Secretary of Defense has just responded last week and admitted that the $1 billion mission that he led against the Houthis, who do not have a navy, has not restored the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels through the Red Sea, and in fact has resulted in the loss of 2 F-18 Hornets to the tune of $60 million apiece, as well as, I believe the last count was 7 Reaper drones to the tune of another $200 million. You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our first Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about more than all of this is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the war fighters, and yes, the war fighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming basis for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base that was named for a traitor who took arms against the United States of America, led troops who killed Americans. It was renamed for Mike Novosel, a Medal of Honor recipient, who in his citation for the Medal of Honor includes that he saved 29 American lives, to include hovering backwards in a helicopter towards an enemy bunker where a wounded American was laying and saved that person, including after being taken fire himself. I know a little something about what it takes to fly a helicopter when you've been hit by enemy fire. That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. We know that California is just a deliberate, systematic, political, and dangerous campaign led by you. We should not be using our military to play cops against Americans. General Kane, as chairman, a key part of your job is to coordinate military planning across the joint force. Is the department currently incorporating into any military plans expanding the use of the reserve forces to include the National Guard or active duty troops to support domestic law enforcement, including in other locations in the United States?
Senator, you know, we carefully.
No, General.
Well, it's not really a yes or no question, Madam Senator. We plan all kinds of different things.
I think it is a yes or no question.
I'm not aware of anything, but the reason why I'm answering is the tags may be looking at something that I'm not aware of.
What are you doing at your level? You're not aware of that happening at your level? Because we know that on his first day, President Trump directed U.S. Northern Command to revise its unified command plan to add new planning requirements to combat, and I quote, criminal activities. A series of follow-up executive orders continue to redirect DoD priorities to supporting domestic law enforcement, including one in April that tells DoD, and I quote, use national security assets for law and order. In other words, do law enforcement's job. I'd like to enter these executive orders into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Secretary Hegseth, you say you are focused on warfighting and warriors. These are your words. Yet you are diverting untold DoD resources and attention to a fundamentally non-military mission of domestic policing. Across the country, we have qualified police officers who are trained for that mission. They know those streets better than the Marines you deploy to Los Angeles, who normally focus on the Indo-Pacific. And you recently approved 700 more troops in 3 other states to do admin and logistics works for ICE. You say all of this is valuable training, but I would much rather have our troops do tough, realistic training relevant to high-end combat. Instead of typing in spreadsheets for ICE, they should be conducting live fire maneuver exercises. Instead of patrolling American neighborhoods and standing in front of federal buildings, they should be rehearsing call for fire missions. We have local police who can stand in front of those federal buildings. And the list of distractions goes on. You are encouraging the DoD workforce to go work for DHS in increasing numbers. You're pulling the military away from facing foreign enemies who literally say things like death to America. And you're putting troops with weapons aimed at Americans. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your incompetence.
Dangerous misuse of the military and failures that could cost American lives. Duckworth began by driving straight into the numbers, cold, hard, and devastating. She laid out the receipts: 2 F-18 Hornets worth $200 million combined, gone. 7 Reaper drones, another $200 million down the drain. All this after Hegseth led a billion-dollar mission that was supposed to restore the safe passage of U.S.-flagged vessels through the Red Sea. Instead, the mission failed completely. The Houthis, despite having no navy, were still a threat. The shipping lanes remained dangerous, and America was left with nothing but wreckage and an astronomical bill. She didn't stop at the financial waste. Duckworth accused Hegseth of one of the gravest lapses in judgment a defense secretary could commit, sending classified operational information over a messaging app to his wife, who had no security clearance, just to show off. It wasn't just a breach of protocol, it was a reckless act that could have endangered American lives. The room stiffened as she delivered the accusation, making it clear this wasn't a petty mistake. This was a dangerous, ego-driven decision that no responsible leader would ever make. Then came the attack on his leadership style, or rather, the lack of it. Duckworth painted a picture of a toxic command environment, where no one wanted to serve as Hegseth's chief of staff or take on other senior leadership positions. This wasn't about personal disagreements, it was about an atmosphere so hostile and ineffective that it crippled the Department of Defense from the inside. But in Duckworth's eyes, the problem wasn't just his incompetence in strategy or management, it was his obsession with distractions, like defending the names of military bases honoring Confederate generals. While American service members faced real threats, Hegseth was burning time and political capital, protecting symbols of men who fought against the United States. Duckworth made it personal, recalling her own time stationed at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base once named after a Confederate officer, but later renamed in honor of Medal of Honor recipient Mike Novosel. She told the gripping story of how Novosel flew a helicopter under enemy fire, saving 29 American lives. Her point was sharp: real heroes deserve honor, not traitors. And leadership means choosing integrity over nostalgia for the wrong side of history. From there she pivoted to what she considered one of his most dangerous decisions: the misuse of the U.S. military for domestic law enforcement. Duckworth cited executive orders that redirected the Department of Defense away from core combat missions and into policing American streets, deploying the National Guard, and even active duty troops to handle domestic situations. Wasn't just an overreach, it was a move that risked eroding public trust in the military, escalating tensions at home, and blurring the lines between defending the nation and controlling its citizens. She pressed General Kane on whether the military was currently planning to expand such deployments. His vague, hesitant answers only fueled her argument that this was a dangerous, creeping policy shift. For Duckworth, who has lived the reality of deploying troops overseas, using them against the very people they're sworn to protect was a betrayal of American values and a threat to democracy itself. Then came her most damning examples of wasted manpower. Marines who should have been focused on the Indo-Pacific were instead patrolling American neighborhoods. 700 more troops were assigned to do administrative work for ICE, typing in spreadsheets instead of training for high-end combat. She dismantled the justification that this was valuable training, pointing out that it was nothing more than busy work, draining combat readiness and weakening the military's ability to face real foreign threats. Duckworth called it what it was, a long list of distractions that pulled the military away from its core mission. She accused Hegseth of encouraging members of the DoD workforce to leave for positions at the Department of Homeland Security, further hollowing out the nation's defense capabilities. She argued that every time troops were used as domestic police or administrative staff, it wasn't just a waste of skill, it was a dangerous shift that emboldened foreign adversaries and eroded America's ability to defend itself. And she didn't soften her words when it came to his personal fitness for the job. If Hegseth wanted to be the secretary of DHS, she said, he should apply for that role after being fired from his current one due to incompetence. The message was as blunt as it was brutal: he was unqualified, unprepared, and unfit to lead the military of the United States. In her closing moments, Duckworth tied it all together: low morale in the ranks, chronic mismanagement, wasted resources, ignored recruitment problems, and an overall lack of clear priorities. She made it clear that these weren't just political talking points. They were symptoms of systemic breakdowns that threatened the safety of the nation and the lives of the service members who depended on competent leadership. What made her words so powerful wasn't just the precision of her accusations, it was the credibility she brought as a combat veteran herself. Duckworth has faced enemy fire. She has served with the men and women whose lives are put on the line every time the Pentagon makes a decision, and that gave her an authority that no political spin could deflect. This wasn't a partisan clash. It wasn't about scoring points. It was about holding a leader accountable for choices that, in her view, weakened the nation, endangered its people, and wasted its resources. By the time she finished, there was no mistaking her message. Leadership is measured not by rhetoric, but by the results that keep Americans safe, and by that standard, Hegseth had failed, spectacularly. So what do you think? Was this a justified takedown or political overkill? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more stories where political theater collides with real accountability, make sure you subscribe, because the next one is even more controversial.